All right, continuing on. I am Dave Paris, and this is the Author of Fate video series, guitar series. So in our last video, we were talking about the intro, and this section is going to deal with the eBow parts of the song, kind of the verse sections, if you will. So we're coming into that off of that inverted G to D that we did. And then I throw in a B suspended second using all 7 strings. And so I will approach it from the first string and go down using an upward strum going down on all 7 strings. And so your B suspended second is down here on the 2nd fret. Some folks call it an add 9. I call it a suspended second. That's a movie. At any rate, what's happening is we're playing our B minor chord. If you're not aware of this chord, and we're taking our 2nd finger and just lifting it up so that our 1st finger bars on the 2nd fret of the 2nd string gets that C sharp in there and creates this suspended second. I personally call it a suspended second because there's no 3rd, and a lot of times these chords want to resolve to something that's unresolved. I always feel that the 2nd resolves up to the 3rd. If it had actually had the 3rd in there, then I'd be more likely to call it an add 9. But whatever you call it, whether you call it an add 9 or a suspended second, don't be a hater. But at any rate, you're coming down into that. Now for the eBow, don't know how much you've videoed eBows at this point, but a couple of things about it. For one thing, we will not be using our officially licensed Dave Paris guitar picks for the eBow section, because the eBow is a magnetic device that magnetizes the strings in a bowing kind of fashion, and not bowing like airplane, but like a bow, like a violin bow. So what happens is it magnetizes the strings and creates this sustain. And the thing about the eBow, the common basics of the eBow is a lot of times we're using our front pickup, our neck pickup, because it's more responsive, it's more able to move around in it. And then you always hear the sweet spot, that people talk about the sweet spot. And it's different it's different anytime you use it, but basically you're moving the eBow around to try to find where it comes in, where it responds. And the nice thing is that while you're moving it around, you're hearing it do that fade in. Okay, so the eBow allows you to make this reverse kind of sound, makes your guitar, kind of sound like it's a reverse. You can, there's lots of people that have emulated bagpipes and flutes and violins and things like that. I was going for a Moog synth approach, synth sound similar to our recently departed Keith Emerson. So my idea, actually even when we recorded it, we threw a Moog effect over top of the eBow parts. And so that was where I wanted to create this kind of proggy, keyboardy, eclectic kind of sustained sound with what I was doing. And so I'm not gonna go into note for note the eBow sections that I use, but I'll play both the first verse and the second verse eBow sections here, and then we'll talk about some of the things that happen in it. So like in the first verse, I'll slide up. So I'm also using my carbon 7-string as opposed to my Dave Paris Sean inspired 7-string, because it actually has frets. So if you're actually looking for frets and everything. But what's going on in here? I'll use, one of the things that I like to do is I like to sustain one note and then fade another one in. Okay, now I'm also using my hand behind the eBow to try to block out some of these other strings so that I have a little bit more control over them. I don't want them, I don't want them bleeding in like that when I'm using it. And so I will open up and then fade into another string. And another thing that I'm having to do, particularly on the first verse, is I'm staying on the string that I'm on for a long time. And the reason is because you get the most sustain off of it. If I try to switch, you got a little bit of that lag time. Okay, so I do that down here on this little beat, but by and large I'm trying to, I have to really kind of slam in to get that beat in on time as well. But if you're over the sweet spot, it's not as noticeable, hopefully. So that's the first verse. So the second verse, when I come off of that B suspended second, I'll put my finger down onto that D on the second string and I'll fade in from that chord. And this, now notice, I've got my hand deadening all of these other strings. And then I actually kind of wrap around to grab the first string so that I'm not getting any, I'm just getting a little more control off of it, so I can only get this second string in here. And then what I do is I do this kind of keyboardy, I really wanted to go for that kind of keyboardy sound. Where I just let the note sustain out. Anyhow, but you get the idea. Okay, so okay, we're on the second verse, right? So okay, so another thing that I'm doing in there is, we talked about the sustain. This I'm actually doing opposite, where I'm trying to make it more staccato. And I'm letting this... Okay, now this particular eBow has the switch for where it'll go to, like, the harmonic, as opposed to the traditional. I'm not using the harmonic one, but it's interesting how it almost, at times, it'll actually really want to feed back into that. So at any rate, that gives you the crash course on at least what I was using conceptually for the eBow. So we'll carry on next in our series coming up soon. Thanks a lot.